So just give me a couple minutes to get that rolling.
Good.
Say hey to the folks, and then we'll jump right into recording. Alrighty, we are live. What's going on, YouTube crowd? Got a good one for you tonight. Going over goose hunting with Kile Jones. So just stay tuned as we get the live stream up and rolling, and we'll jump into the recording. So I hope everybody's season's going well. I know a lot of you guys are on the tail end or already out, depending on where you live. And we're feeling it too, getting close. What's up, West Fowler? What up, Buggy? How's it going? It's going good. It's going good. I'm loving the late season goose hunting right now, and ready to hit up some Kansas ducks soon. Yep, we got Elliot the Ductator with us, per usual. I can't wait for a whole weekend of Ductator jokes. If only I could figure out a way to edit all my videos with with a little stash on you. Maybe that'll be my my thumbnail. What's up, Tim?
You're gonna put a Hitler stash on me?
Probably.
Okay.
That doesn't get you kicked off YouTube. I don't know what will.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah, Tim off the heels of a awesome weekend up there with Elliot.
Man, did he ever hit the lottery on that one, man?
Oh, no,
for the
I
one
know.
weekend for him to come down to hunt.
Yep, that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
What's up, Killer Geek? Weather finally came in North Carolina, and you guys have consistent cold up too, or up top. Are you guys done in North Carolina? I figured you guys, well, no, I guess further down south, you guys are going to be in for a little while still. What up, Jim? Thanks for joining us. All right, we good on your end, Elliot?
Yep, I got links out, ready to roll.
Okay. Let's just go ahead and we'll jump right into it. Hey, real quick, Kyle, before we go.
What's up?
I was looking up some back history on you, and I was on callingducks.com, and I wanted to know if the stats on that are accurate.
Yeah, for the most part, callingducks.com they do a really, really good job of keeping up with everybody.
Awesome.
Yeah, we'll get the guy that actually runs the website. He'll message people and be like, "Yo, did you get who are the who won that contest?" Like he's pretty adamant about getting the information. So I'd say it's pretty up to date.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I think we're ready to go ahead and go live or start recording. So.
Good.
Alrighty, folks, we are back, and we are live with the guest, and he is the 2018, 2019, both years, world champion goose calling, as well as he boasts 34 wins and 75 top fives, and he's currently ranked number 2 in the goose calling power rankings. How you doing tonight, Kyle?
And I'm doing great. I'm doing really great, man. I appreciate you having me on here, and you and Elliot. You guys are a really good time. So I'm looking forward to talking goose hunting.
Oh, well, that's the first we got.
You pissed him off by that number 2 ranking thing, is what happened. I don't know why you'd say that.
Hey, number
you
2 is very
number
good.
2. He's number 1, and he knows it. You go insult him, and now he's gone.
Well, that's a first for us, the call drop.
Hi, you reached Kile Jones. Please leave your name.
I think he's going to have to add my number so we don't get the...
Well, we'll get him right back on here,
yeah,
guys. I'm sure you'll edit most of this out.
Yeah, we'll edit all this out. So, Does Boss plated bismuth normally fragment when it hits birds? It doesn't fragment. I have seen it actually in my birds before, but it's very rare. I've actually only seen it once all season, and I've shot over 100 birds with it. So I think the live stream voicemail, the copper plating prevents that. So if you have bismuth, it wouldn't have that. You'd have much more of an issue with that, the same way you have with lead, as it is a malleable and soft metal. So let me give Kyle.
I've seen quite a few of them
Really?
in mine.
Okay.
Yeah, 4 or 5, and they're always just smashed. They're completely disfigured and just smashed down. But I would much rather bite onto one of what I see than a big piece of steel. I can tell you that.
Yep. Alrighty, Kyle, we got you back. Alrighty.
What happened there?
Oh, I don't know if it was my end or your end, but we had a call drop there. So,
Okay. Yeah. That's
no worries. We'll be able to edit that out and back to smooth sailing. So,
Okay.
but yeah, super pumped to have you on here tonight. The topic for tonight is going to be black belt level goose hunting. As the thumbnail says, hunt like a champion. So,
one quick question is, if you're ranked number 2, who's number 1, and do you know him?
Oh yeah. Number 1 is Robbie Iverson. He is 3-time world goose calling champion. And then he's also won the world goose calling champion of champions, which is like only the champions can compete in that, or the guys that have won a world title. And he has won it. He won it in 2015. He's been retired now for 5 years now. So he's an unbelievable caller. We actually grew up calling together, and getting better with each other, learning from him, and then he learned from me, kind of went hand in hand as far as working together to better ourselves and relying on each other for that. So he's rightfully, number 1, man. He's the greatest of all time, in my opinion.
Awesome. Well, that's pretty cool backstory, and I was kind of curious too. How you could be number 2 after winning worlds 2 years in a row.
Yeah, seriously. What do you got to do?
yeah. It's close. It's really close. But man, he, like I said, he's easily the greatest, in my opinion. Anyway, so, but it's close. I'm closing the gap there.
Now you're not that. Oh, how old are you?
I just turned 28. So I'm.
Yeah, are you a lot younger than most of the accomplished callers? I would think that seems like a really young age to have the success that you've had.
Well, so Robbie, he was retired by the time he was like 22.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so he was fairly young. He won his first one when he was 17. And then, most of the guys there, about my age right now, 28 to 30. The youngest guys competing right now are about, 20, 21, 19. I work with a kid. He's 16. He's probably the youngest one that is, he's the youngest one that can really, be a force within, the group of guys that have been competing with each other for a while. So he'd probably be the youngest one. But most of the guys will span between 22 to 28, 29, 30.
Awesome.
I'm surprised it's that young.
Yeah. Whenever Robbie and I were competing, there were so many guys that were like 15, 16, 14 years old competing. And then I guess they just figured out what women were or hunting, and just kind of got distracted and stopped calling. And, they're still heck of callers, but, they just kind of got out of the whole contest calling scene. And the younger age is not appealing to them as much anymore, I guess. So it's a little frustrating, but at the same time, that's just how it goes.
So here's a couple questions for a few questions for you.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out the best way to lead into this, but so I actually put out an Instagram story. So first off, you guys need to check out Kile Jones over on his Instagram. He's got some great content out there as well. But one thing you put together, and I think you put together this year at some point, or I guess it was last year at this time. But you put together a I guess a tutorial segment from your Instagram highlights on how to goose call. And you actually, I put out a little story of me blowing a goose call, and the first thing you did, you messaged me, "Hey man, check out my tips and tricks. You really, you really need some help there." So,
Oh man, it wasn't like a knock or anything like that. I was like, man, I got some stuff here if you wanna utilize it.
well, it's definitely something I'm going to utilize because one of
Yeah.
my goals, and I just haven't got around to it. I mean, I can do the basic calling, but
Yeah.
I really want to up my game for the goose calling. So I've looked into it, but I need to take some time and practice them. So definitely, a good resource that he has over there for anybody who's
Yeah.
looking to up their game from a world champion's perspective on goose calling. And also, kind of to hit on that in the same vein, been watching your Instagram stories and content as well, and you guys are just off your freelancing. Was it Montana? Freelancing Montana goose hunt?
Yeah, man, that was incredible. That was so, Matt McCormick, he's a photographer he works with Sitka and all those guys, and then Brady Davis, he lives in Montana. Well, they held a competition, a video submission based competition, uh, of guys, use the hashtag freelance honkers, to be entered, and the best video or who we think should go wins, right? So we had two guys that we had to pick, and it could be funny, it could be serious. There's a great mixture of it, but man, it was absolutely incredible. And it wasn't a guided hunt, it wasn't leases or anything like that. Man, it was solely knock on doors, get permission. Hopefully, we get there before another group does. And it was unbelievable, man. And there were so many geese. They're gonna get mad that I'm talking about it, but man, it was like, man, there was so many geese. It was unbelievable.
Not that numbers are everything, but did you keep track of your guys' numbers on your hunt out there?
Yeah, so we actually the first day we shot 30, was a 6-man limit, which was we had two fields locked up and had permission on, and we decided to hunt the field with less geese and hunt a little bit of traffic just in case we needed a backup plan or needed a plan B, in case we couldn't find anything. We didn't want to burn up the field that was loaded, like absolutely loaded. So what we did is we hunted the field with less geese, ran a little bit of traffic, and we shot our 6-man limit. And then the next day or that night after we shot our geese and went and scouted, we actually gained permission on a piece of property that had a phenomenal feed, just a phenomenal goose feed. So we locked it down, or so we thought, and we were driving up the road, and we see a young guy and his dad driving down the road, and they stop because we're looking at Onyx and everything like that, making sure we're good with property lines and how we're going to set up and stuff like that. And the guy pulls up and he's like, "Hey guys, you need help with anything, or you guys lost or what?" And we explain it, and the kid in the passenger seat was like, "Well, I've got permission on that property too. It's just me. Can I hunt with you guys?" So it kind of turned out to be pretty cool because he hunted with us, and we gained a really, really cool friend to hunt with. So second day we shot 12, and then he hunted with us on the third day again. We found a good feed, and we shot 35. So it was pretty cool.
Oh, wow.
So we shot a good amount of geese in just a few days, and it was a really good time, man. It was a much needed hunting, get a time away hunting trip,
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely looked like a lot of fun. And that's something you really don't hear, I guess, as much about as people going out freelance goose hunting a state like Montana, opposed to, I mean, you hear a lot of people doing like the Arkansas duck hunting thing. So it seemed like a pretty cool, unique thing you guys had going on there.
Oh, for sure, man. And that there's still quite a few states that you can go out and do that. Unfortunately, Arkansas has some amazing duck hunting when the weather's right and the conditions are right, but it's really really hard and kind of unheard of to go and knock on doors and gain permission and everything like that. Unfortunately, in this day and age, so it was really cool. It was really refreshing, and then a combination with being able to get permission on a spot and then actually run into the guy that had permission as well. I mean, he had permission first, so he could have been like, well, I'm hunting it, but he was like, well, it's just me. And it was really cool, really refreshing to have that and build that camaraderie and friendship there versus just being like, all right, screw you guys, I'm going to hunt it. I got it first, kind of being like a little selfish about it. But it was really cool.
Awesome. Yeah, that's definitely cool to hear, as waterfowlers and hunters is kind of, it's just way better to hear stories about people banding together and teamwork opposed to people fighting with each other and all kind of stuff. So definitely props to all you guys on that and making that happen. So I guess let's just go ahead and jump into the main topic and just to kind of, would you consider yourself an expert goose hunter at this point?
I personally, no. I'm confident in my ability to go out and hunt Canada geese, but I don't think I would ever want to consider being an expert. I don't think anybody has that say. Because every single hunting experience, man, just brings something different and throws you for a different loop. How many times have you gone out hunting and everything's gone as planned? That's ideal. That's what you want, but it's not. Yeah. It's not what you want, not what you get. So, but I would, I have a lot of advice that I can give or insight, but it's not one of those where it's like, hey, my way, highway type deals. It's definitely not one of those. I'm always open to other opinions and and hearing and learning from that.
Yeah, that's definitely an attitude of humility for the number of geese and the success I see you having. Elliot could probably take a look at that attitude, the way he talks about mallards and being the expert purist, on those.
just a purist.
Yeah, he's definitely a greenhead purist, so.
I'm just ignoring. Every week it's getting worse and worse with Jordan talking trash, and I'm just taking gut shot after gut shot. I'm not even gonna say anything.
I know. Jordan said that he's going to Kansas pretty soon, right? So you guys can just video you duking it out in the marsh, and
yeah. Jordan's been trying to piggyback off my success for years.
Unfortunately, it hasn't worked yet, but I'll just keep piggybacking away. So,
I know. Yeah, we kill him when he's not around.
Yeah, that's how it always goes.
Yep. So I guess the first topic I want to, starting from the top on goose hunting. So I guess take us through your thoughts on scouting.
Well, I mean, that's huge. It's extremely important. I mean, there's areas that I've been in where I knew that if I just got in a field and set up, because I knew that how many geese were flying over, I could kind of, last minute, last ditch effort, Hail Mary, could go out, set up some type of spread, some type of hide, and either run traffic and pull some geese. But, that's not ideal. That's not what you drive hours on hours for. That's the, man, I forgot to scout this week. type attitude, and that's happened before. I've done it. I'll admit it. But no, scouting's huge. You want to make sure that either you're getting permission on the X, or you're somewhere between where they roost and and the X. Just to try to get under them in some way, shape, or form, whether it's directly under their flight path, or 400, 500 yards off the flight path, just to try to run traffic. There's quite a few things I try to look for, and obviously, getting into extreme depth here, weather patterns can affect it tremendously. In Montana, what we're looking at is, it's 5 degrees and clear. Obviously that's not a good combination for Canada geese in January. You're looking at those geese are going to fly between 3 and 4:30 in the afternoon, maybe even closer to 5, pushing shooting time. Just because it's so cold, they're going to be so want to lay so tight on the ice, on the water, and conserve as much energy as possible. So I always, whenever I scout, I'm always looking at the weather for the days that I'm trying to plan and hunt for. Obviously, with wind conditions, whenever you get to that field, gain permission, or whether you have your field that you have an X on, where you're going to be hiding, so you can be that much, a step further ahead, so that way you're not pulling into the field and be like, all right, guys, where are we going to hide? That's not ever a good feeling. Having 7 guys try to decide where to hide. You always want to be as precise as possible, especially if you are hunting an X field, because that can come to bite you if you're off by 100 yards. Generally, I try to look for, and again, this is weather dependent, I'm trying to look for spread out, relaxed geese. 90% of the time, if you drive by a field and they're all super tight and close to each other, it's usually because it's either really, really cold or there's something that's causing those geese to congregate. I feel like, the more spread out they are, the looser the flock is. It generally relates to, all right, these geese are relaxed. There's not any threat in the area. They're cool with this field. If they're usually tight, they're threatened. They just got in the field and they're trying to figure out what's going on with the food situation there, or there's a threat and they're trying to figure out what's going on. So, that's some things that I just kind of take into account whenever I'm scouting. Just really, really making sure everything's precise and looking like how I want it to look.
So kind of to hit on something you said there earlier. So when you got those really cold, clear days and the geese are just going to sit all morning, what is your strategy for coming at that? Is it just, we got to wait till we got a windy day with lots of weather that's going to push them out to the field to feed? Or, what are you kind of looking at as far as if that's your only day to hunt? Are you just kind of plumb out of luck, or what's your...
Man, so in that situation, I understand, there's only, some guys can only hunt Saturday, Sunday, and I completely understand that. And with that type of situation, say you scouted this field all week, these geese are hitting it every single day at this time, and then Saturday, it's 4 degrees out and it's clear. Like, you can see the moon, you can see the stars. That's not a good indication of those geese getting there at 9 o'clock, 9:30 in the morning. So in that type of situation, man, I'm going right back to bed. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to bed. I'm going to go eat a nice breakfast, make sure everything's ready to go. And then I'm trying to go and try to set up between 12 and 1 o'clock. Because, you might.
What'd you say? Again.
Yeah, I got him mad again.
Jordan. Look how short I got my beard shaved. I'm really regretting it.
Yeah, it's kind of scaring me.
I got so tired of having hair all over my face. I felt claustrophobic. It's like I just had to do it. Now I look at myself, I'm like, I look naked.
Oh man.
He's back.
Yep, I am back. I apologize.
No
My
worries.
bad.
I got it.
So
what were the days you were saying where they don't fly until
It's
afternoon? What were those weather conditions? Clear and cold with no wind, or just clear and cold?
It's just clear and cold in general. Usually that's the case because I mean, you think January, February when you're hunting these late season Canada geese, or even December. I mean, they're trying to conserve as much energy as possible. With it being clear and cold, you know, there's no need for them to get up and feed right away. They're not technically in like survival mode. Whereas like if it's downpouring snow, you know, and it's 20 degrees out, that's ideal conditions for you know, late season Canada. You want it to be snowing, you want it to be 20 degrees, low visibility, and you want to be in some type of X field. But you know, if you get clear and cold, there's not really a need for them to move and use that energy when they don't need to. So they'll just sit there and hold it all in all day. You know, and they won't, you know, fly until, I mean, hopefully, in the guy that can only hunt on Saturday and Sunday, hopefully they're flying at 2:00 whenever he just gets done setting up. But there's a possibility that he's going to be getting those geese at 3:30, 4:00.
so your exact ideal conditions. It would be 20 degrees. It would be snowing. It would be what would the wind speed be?
Man, ideal conditions would be like 30 degrees, and then just because that's cold enough to have the ground would be hard enough to be able to pull in. I would have 6 to 8 inches of snow, maybe a little bit more. That way you have a snow cover on your layout line, and that snow comes right up to the door frames, and you can just get a snow shovel in, dig in, and be invisible, and then have a good wind between, you know, 12 to 15 miles per hour. And man, that would be, it could be out of the north, south, east. It wouldn't matter at that point. I mean, because it's just like that's gold mine right there for me anyway. You know, snowing, downpour snow, low visibility. That's money.
Awesome. So kind of to hit on somewhat of a controversial topic, but Elliot and I have both got a little bit of hate here and there for hunting geese on water. And I know that most of the big-time goose hunters are primarily field hunters. So what are your thoughts on field hunting versus water hunting?
Well, let's rewind just a slight bit, all right?
Okay.
I feel like anybody, man, if that's what you guys prefer or what you have going on, I don't see why it should be getting, you know, hated on. You know, that's just, I can't stand that. Nowadays it's just getting terrible with the I guess social media peer pressure of doing things the commenter's way. You know what I'm saying? Like if your preferred method is shooting Canada geese on a farm pond, man, have at it. You know, like that's, have fun, man. But no, to go back to what you're saying, like I love shooting Canadas over water. That is like, that's so much fun to me, in my opinion, because it's just the geese in my experience, they finish a whole lot better, you know, because most of the time if you're hunting water, they've been there before, so they know that's their safe zone, right? So these geese are coming in, dragging their feet across the water, coming in low, or I mean, if you shoot them a little bit up, like 20 yards, I mean, just a smack on the water is like, all right, man, you know, and it's just a sense of accomplishment, you know, that hey, I finished some Canada geese on the water. That's awesome. I love it. If I were to pick a specific scenario, I would love to have snow and then ice and just a little bit of open water, and just have that spread looking nasty, like shells on the ice, floaters in the water, full bodies on the ice and in the field or something like that, and it'd be great. But no, shoot them over water, that's great. Have at it.
Awesome. Yeah, I don't know about
I'd
you,
say
Elliot, but
I would say probably the best video my favorite video I've ever made was geese on the Kansas River on a little ice shelf with, just like you said, with some decoys in the water, most of them on the land. I'm gonna have to, after this show, I'm gonna have to send you a link to this, because
Yeah.
that was, I'm as much of a duck hunter as I am. If I could do that every hunt, oh my gosh, finish them at like 10, 12 yards. I bet you'd be interested in seeing it. I'll have to send you that link over.
Yeah. And I mean, if you have a few people too, and you get a good group in there that's just finishing them, right? They're just like, they're doing it. Like, these geese are gonna land if you don't call a shot in a matter of 3 seconds, right? I mean, it is like throwing a net over geese. I mean, it is like boom, 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 right? And you're just like looking, you're like, whoa, what? You're like, holy crap, we got how many? You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's one of those. It's like, it's really cool to just finish those geese over water, and I like it. I love it. No, Elliot, please send me that, man. I'd love to watch it.
Yeah, there's one shot on there where it's a group of about 8 coming in, and I shot this one. It felt like he was gonna land on my layout blind, because I mean, I shot him probably 12 yards, wings extended, feet down, like literally, like you said, a big butterfly net or a bat. It was incredible. There's nothing more fun than that, I'll say.
Yeah, no, it's great. I love geese over water. It's great.
awesome. Next thing I wanted to kind of hit on is let's go ahead and talk about setup and your spread, and I guess the different strategies that you employ when you're thinking about your setup for the day.
For sure, man. And that comes along with scouting, weather, wind. I really geese are extremely aggressive animals, and they are, whenever you're a lot of guys, especially newer guys, whenever they start getting into goose hunting, they don't realize like, hey, you're not, whenever you're calling at geese, you're actually not calling at them to come hang out, right? It's like a whole reverse psychology factor with those geese, and you're trying to master that, right? Because you're actually telling those geese, like, yo, this is my spot, like, this is my food, this is my mate, this is my little spot here. Do not come by it. And that's why those geese get more and more aggressive around their mates, around their food, and everything like that. That's whenever they start to get more vocal. Whenever you're calling, just think of that as well, because you're like, all right, you're trying to give off that illusion of, all right, yeah, this spot is safe, but at the same time, yeah, this is my spot. So it's like, it's a whole reverse psychology deal. It's kind of tricky to, like, whenever you think about it, whenever I first learned that, I was so confused. I was like, oh my gosh, this is gonna cause me nightmares. But I say, I'll just give like a scenario out there. I'm on an X field. I've got a good hide. 8 inches of snow covers on layout blind. Couple dozen goose decoys. Doesn't have to be. It could be full body silos, shells. With shells, the shells are always going to be facing into the wind. All the geese that ever land, and hit the snow, and you can watch them in a park or anything like that. They will always be, if there's a good wind, they will always be facing into that wind. I have no idea why. It is just something that I've noticed and have picked up on, and I've learned from a couple guys as well. But like sleeper shells, if you got a bunch of sleeper shells, they always need to put they're facing into the wind, right? So if I were 8 inches of snow, a couple dozen decoys, a couple dozen sleeper shells, I'm trying to put my sleeper shells in the far upwind side, right, to show that these geese are hitting the ground. They're sitting on top of the snow. They're trying to melt the snow with their body heat to get to the food below. And then behind those, or downwind, you've got your Canada goose decoys or Canada geese walking around that have already, established that area that they've laid down in, melted that snow, and food is easier to access. I try to stay away from like alphabet spreads or anything like that, just because it's what a lot of guys run and it's effective. But with late season Canada geese, I mean, what I try to resemble is what I saw in that field the day before or a couple days prior, is relaxed geese, geese that are as realistic as possible. But what I try to do is I set decoys where I don't want my geese landing, right? So obviously you're going to have your kill hole or your hole right in front of the blinds, depending on the wind. So I try to generally keep that open, and then just kind of have a few different like escape routes, I guess. So it could be a giant, it could just be like a giant horseshoe type looking deal, right? With a giant opening right in the middle. And that's kind of what I do. I don't really go as far as like getting crazy with like fingers or big hooks or lines or anything like that. I try to resemble what I saw last, and just have a hole where the geese are focused on the calling and that opening, so they don't land with other geese. Because you got to think, like, if they're going to be landing with other geese, those are, they're aggressive. They typically don't want to land right next to them, So it's like I said, it's that reverse psychology factor playing into it again. But yeah, that's a kind of a not generic, but a in-depth look at my thought process going into it. It's just kind of like I want geese and decoys set where I don't want them landing. So I generally try to keep that hole right open right in front of us.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes complete sense with that thought process. On the decoys, do you have kind of a preference between, and some of the guys that I've hunted with, we have had a little debate on this, but windsocks or silhouettes or shells or full bodies? I mean, are full bodies better than all the rest? I know that was kind of a thought process for a long time. Or what's kind of your thoughts on the decoys?
Yeah, I mean, in Montana, we hunted over 8 dozen Dave Smith and 10 dozen AVNX sleeper shells. So it was a high quality, extremely, really, really realistic spread. But we were in the right spot at the right time, so we could have gone out there with 5 dozen black and white, or silhouettes, whether they're dive bomb, big owls, whatever, real geese, and we would have had probably the same result because we were in the right spot at the right time, and we put ourselves in the best situation possible, right? So there are times when the silos are way more advantageous than full bodies or anything like that. I would tend to go in late season. If I'm on an X, I would try to go full bodies, because it looks more realistic. There's more depth there with the goose decoys and your look, but also as far as a visibility standpoint, usually full bodies are a little bit bigger, and you just want to kind of stand out, especially if you're hunting in snow. But I wouldn't pass up the opportunity to use silos either. Like whenever I go up to Michigan this weekend, I'm probably going to be using only silos because it's the ground's hard enough to freeze, but it's supposed to get a little warm, and we've got to pack everything in, and that's just we're dealing the hand we're dealt. But I don't think there's situations where those types of decoys are more advantageous than others. But I understand a lot of guys, they hunt with silos because that's their preferred method, or everybody's situation is a little bit different. If I were hunting an X field, absolutely, like, give me everything you got: silos, shells, full bodies. I'm trying to look as big as possible and just trying to create a black hole, to draw the attention, be a big magnet, to the geese that I'm trying to traffic.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Another thing I wanted to hit up on, I know you said earlier with your ideal conditions, it's a layout in the snow. But one thing that I've been doing a lot is A-frame hunting for geese, and even using those out in the middle of the field. But what are your thoughts on A-frames versus the layout?
Man, I will never pass up the opportunity to use an A-frame over a layout because I want to sit up, I want to sit down, I want to sit on top of a bucket, and honestly, I'm a 10 times better shot when I'm shooting out of an A-frame or panel blind, whatever. It's great. I love hunting out of an A-frame. If I have the right snow and snow covers with an A-frame, I would absolutely run an A-frame out in the middle of a snow. Because the depth there is off. They're not going to be able, especially if everybody's got snow camo on, and you cover up some of those holes. They're not going to tell what. They're just going to think that's a little hill there. There's not going to be that depth perception. They don't have that to get, to understand. Oh wow, that's a big, like a 4 foot tall a snow hill. They don't have that. But if you don't have the snow covers, that's when I might go to the layout with the snow cover, because you're lower profile, you're matching the surroundings or anything like that. But no, I love A-frames. The more you have, the better it looks, the more natural it looks. If you have 2 or 3 of them out in the middle of a cornfield, it looks extremely realistic. It looks like an hedgerow, versus just one out there. It kind of like a, just like an eyesore kind of. But you can still have good success with it. Absolutely. No, I love them, man. That's my. If I could choose, if you made me choose between A-frames in the middle or layouts in the middle, I'm absolutely going to pick A-frames. Just because, man, it is nice not having to lay on the ground and get cold and all that stuff. It is. You can have a heater. If you got a buddy that has a sweet cooker, he can cook breakfast in there. You're set. You're set.
Awesome. Yeah, I can kind of speak to that a little bit. I've only layout hunted just a handful of times.
Yeah.
And we A-frame hunt, almost every time. So we had our first layout hunt earlier this year, and oh man, the first couple times I went to sit up, and my strap got tangled around my gun barrel. I go to aim down, and all I can see is my strap on that. And then the next ones, the shot call was called just a little late, so it's like you get up and you go to shoot, and they're already veering off to one of the sides, and you can't shoot over the other. So
yeah.
And there's definitely some user error in that, but like you said, it's 10 times easier in an A-frame. And the next hunt we went out in the A-frame, and it was just, it's night and day difference. And I definitely prefer the A-frame over the layouts. And there's people who prefer the layout. It is definitely pretty cool to lay hidden in that and have the geese coming right over you. So there's definitely pros and cons to both. But I would say on a simplicity or ease of use level, the A-frame is, in my opinion, as well, is just definitely ahead of the layout on that.
Yeah, I'm with you there. To touch on what you just talked about, with your strap getting caught up. Man, like if I have the opportunity to take new people out hunting, I honestly don't want to hunt out of a layout because of safety. You want to make sure that that person, it's their first time out, that it's their, you're trying to take as much precaution as you can to make sure that they're having a good experience and having a good first waterfowl hunt or whatever. But you also have to take into account, like, okay, this is, if I'm layout hunting, I'm usually doing this with a couple of my buddies that have hunted around each other for a while. They know the shooting lanes. A guy that's new, he doesn't really have the that thought process yet. Whereas with an A-frame, it's literally like stand up, shoot, and everybody else can stay down or shoot with you. If a guy, the guy's given an opportunity in the layout blind and he's sitting in the middle, and you're like, all right, Johnny, shoot him, and that bird veers to the right. Well, he's going to follow that bird and keep going to the right. That's not a good situation. Because with an A-frame, you can at least control it a little bit more.
Yep, definitely agree on that.
Yeah, that's a great point. I've never really thought about that. I've definitely thought about the shooting is so much harder out of a layout, but I've never thought of that safety aspect of it. And I mean,
Yeah.
one of our partners is HTR Innovations, and I got a hold of an A-frame last year. And one of our goals with waterfowl hunting is just to be as versatile as possible. And so, we've only hunted out of the A-frame 3 or 4 times, 5 times this year, but having that A-frame in your arsenal makes, oh man, it just gives you so many more opportunities that you don't have without it. It's just a wonderful tool.
Oh, I'm with you there. I mean, like, I know, you just went down to Arkansas a few weeks ago, and you've got flooded timber, you got buckbrush, and then you've got rice fields and bean fields, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, a lot of times you're looking at that type of scenario, and I was down with my buddy goose hunting for specks and snows, and I'm looking at this field, and I'm like, where are we hiding at, man? And we went right to the ditch, and we put these A-frames at the bottom of the ditch, and they were completely level with the field. You didn't even, like, if you would have looked back and glassed the field from where we were hidden, you wouldn't have known. There's so many different possibilities and scenarios that you can utilize those in, that a lot of guys, they don't realize or think of firsthand. I mean, I just saw the other day a guy, he had panel blinds and he didn't have a boat blind, but he's taking those panel blinds and running them all along the side of his boat. So he just pulled his boat right up on the shore and then puts the panel blind all the way around it. And I was like, I didn't even think of that. I was like,
Yeah,
that's great. I don't even have to, you don't have to worry about putting it up or putting it down or anything like that. You literally pull your boat up right along the bank, you put your panel blind out, and you're hidden. I was like, holy crap, man, that's great.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I think even property myself, I wouldn't put in a set blind like a pit, or even like we were wanting hunting in Arkansas, because once you do that, you're there, and no matter what the wind is, you can't adjust. Yeah, if I owned private property, I would just stick with, like, some panel blinds, A-frames, so that you can be versatile and even just move around where you're at. I know several times down there in Arkansas, we were hunting, and I was like, man, if we just had an A-frame, and I had an A-frame and a couple guys, that other side right over there, 200 yards away, but you get these fixed blinds, you just can't move it.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And that I struggle with that because I came, I moved from an area where I could go get permission on different fields or different ponds or marshes or whatever, and kind of moving down south. It's really, there's a lot of land that are, guys have permanent blinds, they got pit blinds, so you're just sitting in there and it's like, man, this is what we're doing again today. It's like one of those. I'm like, I can't. Sometimes I struggle with it, and it can be frustrating. Absolutely, I'm with you there, man. I'd love to be able to be mobile, You know, I do work for Momarsh, and that's kind of one of, you know, I'm not trying to give us a plug or anything like that, but really they've got a really cool product that a lot of, I mean, I know that you hunt Jordan. I know you got the Invisilab, and that has allowed you to hunt your dog in a lot of areas where you really couldn't.
Oh
So
yeah.
they've got the blinds that are just like that, and it's really really cool to be that versatile, you know.
Oh yeah.
So there is one thing I will go back, and it's kind of like a rambling point here, and go back to the decoy spread, right? And it's one thing that Kelly Powers, who's a world goose calling champion, and sorry, my dog is barking.
Don't worry about it.
He's world goose calling champion and world champion of champions. He kind of taught me this little trick here when it comes to setting decoy spreads with the sentries, right? You can utilize those sentries to direction, basically control the sense of direction that those geese are going to be landing, right? You can set those goose decoys, those sentries, and he calls them their soldiers, right? And basically, by facing those downwind and facing them in the areas that the geese are going to be approaching from, those geese aren't going to want to land head on with those other geese, right? They're gonna want to bump and move and kind of slide off the other direction, like either left or right, you know. So you can utilize those um, those sentries there to uh, to do, to dictate where those geese are going to land. You get what I'm saying? Like you can set those on that far edge of your spread, kind of facing downwind, but towards, you know, kind of towards the blinds a little bit, and those geese are going to want to kind of pitch towards the blinds more. They're going to want to bump off those because they're not going to want to face them or land with them face to face. They're going to want to land and pitch towards the open hole that is set in front of your blind. So if you have some situations where those geese are kind of sliding off, you can take those sentries and utilize those to create kind of like a wall or a fence and corral them towards the hole.
Awesome. No, that definitely makes sense, and I've actually never tried that, but definitely something to consider.
Yeah. No, I meant to touch on that a little bit earlier, but I got a little off track there. It's all good.
Oh, that never happens on our podcast.
So let me ask one more question about decoys before you move on to the next topic. So if you're hunting, let's say, a pond, and the pond's been holding both ducks and geese, and you've got about 4 or 5 dozen duck decoys, and maybe let's say you just have a dozen goose floaters, where is the best positioning for those goose floaters in that whole spread?
It really depends. Obviously, your hide and your wind. I always would try to say, I mean, if there's ever a situation where I can use and hunt a pond where I can utilize both full bodies and floaters for geese, I will. Not only because of visibility, but just that super realistic look. But if you only have goose floaters, I will always try to put my ducks on the far upwind side because I've always noticed, ducks will land with geese, but geese won't land with the ducks. They're going to want to finish. The geese are going to want to finish with the geese. They're not going to want to pass over those ducks in order to get the geese, to get to the other goose decoys. So like if I'm, say, my wind's at my back and that pond is, 50 yards wide by 30 yards long, I'm going to try to line that bank with the duck decoys and set my goose floaters out, 10 more yards and have a little bit of a gap in there. Just to kind of show that little bit of separation there. I know you can get to like parks and stuff like that, where they're intermixed, but more often
That makes
than
sense. That makes sense.
yeah, more often than I've seen, they've always been a little bit separated.
Okay. Normally, when we do goose hunt, 'cause we don't field goose hunt at all,
Mhm.
but we've got a pond, and we've got our white rock socks and silhouettes, and then normally a dozen goose floaters. So I just don't have the knowledge to know, like how do I set this up? We try to mimic
Mhm.
what we see in there, as far as where we're setting up, but that's helpful.
Yeah, and I will say, anytime you can use those goose floaters, or even your white rocks there, the best duck decoys are goose decoys because of the visibility. And they're a larger animal, so it's they can see things better, and it's like a more of a sense of security type deal. So I would always try to have, unless it's just like not a realistic situation, like I'm not gonna go take Canada goose decoys to my timber hole, right? But if I'm out in a public WMA that's all flooded, uh, marsh and all that stuff, yeah, I'm gonna take some goose decoys because the visibility, but at the same time, it's just realistic too. It's applicable, But yeah, I would definitely just throw them out there, but keep them just a little bit of separation there. It shouldn't be enormous.
Awesome. So now to jump to the topic that you've probably been waiting for this whole time, let's go ahead and talk about goose calling.
Yeah, let's do it.
Alrighty. So yeah, I guess how important would you say goose calling is when you're trafficking? Is that, I mean, it's got to be a big part of it.
Yeah, goose. I mean, that's really with traffic, you're going by visibility and sound. So you've already done your part or done your job of setting a good sized decoy spread. You and your buddies banded together. You got a couple dozen decoys out. So I mean, when it comes to calling, I mean, you're trying to get that flock's attention from a good ways away, uh, to say, hey, we got food here. But again, going back to that reverse psychology thing, we're like, it's all right, yeah, we got food here, but back up, right? So then those geese are like, all right, well, if they got food, why do we need to fly another half mile? If they got food, we can just go beat them up or fight them for it. In my opinion, I mean, whenever you're hunting traffic, the more you can do on a call, it is so important, because it'll just, I mean, especially if you're in a high pressured area, you'll be able to out muscle the guys that are hunting next to you, because you're able to do a little bit more. You're able to sound more realistic. You're a little bit louder, a little bit faster. You just keep their attention a little bit more. So I would say that visibility and sound, when it comes to traffic, absolutely calling is extremely important.
So when you guys set up, and I know you probably hunt with a lot of high-end skilled callers, but do you have kind of like a lead caller, or I guess go ahead and talk us through your strategy on that.
Yeah, so I mean, I usually go and man, I hope one day we can all hunt together and just learn from each other. But man, if you guys hunted with me, and my buddies are all, you know, I've they kind of give me crap about it, but I'm an extremely conservative caller. When I need, obviously if I need to get on them, I can do it. But man, I do not call when I don't need to. But usually what we go by is who's seeing those birds first, because teamwork when it comes to calling is it's crucial. Understanding, hey, this guy saw these birds; those are his birds. Those are that's your lead caller right there.
So what if that guy can only cluck?
then man, I'm gonna compliment those clucks as much as I can. I'm gonna just try to get it to sound as close to being as real as as realistic as possible. But it's it's at the same time I'm working to compliment him and work with him versus overriding. I'm not. Those are his birds. He's the one that saw them. He's the one that's communicating with them. He's the one really reading them. I am then next in line. I'm going to be feeding and going off of him whenever he speeds up. I'm going to speed up and work with him. He slows down. I'm slowing down and giving him a 1-2 punch. It's very easy once you get to working and calling with and hunting with a couple guys. It gets easier and easier to work with each other and kind of predict what they're going to be doing next. Working together, it's tough at first, especially if a guy's never hunted with that person before. But man, it is very, very easy to work together and kind of fall in line. And that's the same, I always communicate that with everybody is, hey, if I start calling and I see birds, those are my birds, fall in line. I'll communicate openly, like, hey, do this, or just do this, or something like that. But if you see those birds, those are your birds. I'm gonna fall in line, and it's kind of like a give respect, get respect type deal. It's very easy to do, but also it can be tough to start out. I mean, it sounds 10 times more realistic whenever you start working together.
So what is your ideal number for callers in a group? Is it just so like if you're hunting with a group of, let's say, like 6+, is everybody going to be calling, or I guess what's the teamwork like in that situation?
Well, man, that's a really, really great question. Because to be honest, when I hunted in Montana, everybody was calling, and on some flocks it worked phenomenally well because there'd be a couple guys that are just throwing in clucks, and then I kind of feeding off of who's closest to me or who I can hear the best, and kind of that guy that started calling at those birds and is working those birds, I'm trying to fill in, right? I mean, if there's 6 guys that can run a goose call, that's fantastic. But there's a time and a place for everything that they can do on a goose call. There's sometimes where there's one guy calling because each situation is just a little bit different. But man, if there's 6 guys, that's fantastic. That's more in our back pocket that we can utilize if we need to. Then I'd rather have that, especially like if it were a traffic day. Absolutely, I want that many guys calling. But if we're hunting an X or anything like that, man, like we might be just doing a series of 6 clucks where one guy starts and it just is like click, 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 click. It just is like working together with that. But no, I wouldn't shy away from having a bunch of callers. Now, if it were a bunch of callers that aren't working together, that's going to hurt more than anything. Than having not enough callers. If they're not going to work together, if you're not going to work as a team, then you're not going to accomplish what you want to accomplish with those geese. And that goes for ducks as well. There can be, everybody can be working together except for one guy, and he's up there blowing those geese out or blowing those ducks out, and it's just, that's more harm than good at that point.
So I guess what does it sound like with a group that's not working together? Is it just mistiming the call? And
yeah, I mean it's more of guys stepping on each other's toes. Like there's gonna be guys that are gonna be doing the same thing, right? And they're gonna be doing it at the same exact time, and it just sounds really jumbled. If you're running traffic, that's not as bad. But if you're trying to sound realistic, if you're hunting the X or anything like that, like, man, you really need to lay off and really try to work together versus stepping on everybody's toes. There might be one guy going 100 miles per hour, and then there's like, you know, just look, 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 and then you might have a guy that's like, look, 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 you know, like, and it's completely contradicting everything that you're trying to work for, and it just sounds out of sync. Really, it just doesn't. It's just noise at that point, because then you're talking I whenever I call, and like I said earlier, I'm extremely conservative, but what I think I used this reference a few weeks ago is I'm trying to be the Mike Tyson with my goose call, right? I want to call when I need to call, and I want it to pack as much punch as I possibly can. If I'm out there with 6 other buddies and we're just giving them white noise, you know, that's elevator music to those geese. You know, we want to be packing as many punches as we possibly can. Whereas, you know, with if we're not working together, man, by the time those geese circle us once, they've heard everything that we're trying to give them, and all we're doing is making noise at. You know, it just sounds like, you know, whenever you plug in a TV and it's not hooked up to anything, it's just that, right? That's all they're hearing, versus actual live sounding geese.
Awesome. Well, to kind of wrap this thing up and put a nice bow on it, and, you know, definitely appreciate you coming on, and some awesome insight and depth of knowledge on the goose hunting there. But if you could say one thing to guys who are already kind of established goose hunters, one thing they could improve on to improve their success while goose hunting, what would it be?
I think of it as, and I actually use this reference tonight, right? Is perfect your craft and pay attention to details, because that's what's going to carry you later, you know. And then control what you can control. So put yourself in the best possible situation to have the best possible hunt, right? By doing the homework, scouting hard, hiding effectively, setting, you know, paying close attention to decoy spreads and how those geese work in the field, and being extremely precise. Look for always try to be precise, right? There's, you know, you think of all these different game plans that football programs and basketball programs go through. You know, they're trying to be as precise as possible to win the game. Think of it like that. You know, you want to be as precise as possible, leading up to the hunt, during the hunt, after the hunt, because you ultimately are trying to be successful. You're trying to take a wild animal. You know, you want to pack a punch whenever you go out there and fill your limits, or, you know, put meat in the freezer for you guys. You know, why go through the process of buying decoys, buying blinds, buying guns, buying calls, all extremely expensive things? I mean, right there, you know, most guys are already in $4,000 to $5,000. Why be a little lazy with it or slack on one thing whenever you're spending that amount of money, whenever you can go through and take an extra 5 minutes and be precise with everything to perfect it? You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
So, and then again, going back to a little bit what I just said earlier as well, is controlling what you can control. Man, you know, just like I said earlier, be precise, put yourself in the best position as possible. But remember, those are wild animals that you're chasing. You know, you can't control a lot of factors, but you can control your hide, you can control where you hunt, and your decoy spread, your calling, your shooting, control that, and everything else will fall in place.
Awesome. Any last words, Elliot? Did we lose Elliot?
I think you went to sleep.
I'm sorry, it cut out.
Any last words, Elliot?
Yeah, I thought that's what you said, but it said any last. Well, the one question that I was curious about that haven't been asked yet, is there a difference between your competition calling and your field calling, or is it pretty much the same?
Oh man, there's a huge difference. Huge difference. I would love to touch on this because there's a kind of like a haziness or a kind of like a cloud cover when it comes to competition calling, right? And I would love, and first and foremost, I'd love to get more and more guys interested in contest calling because it really does help when it comes to your goose calling and your duck calling. No, you're not. A competition routine is not where you're going to be out hunting, but just like if you were to go to France or Spain, the more you know in that language, the more it's going to help you. So the more you know in Canada geese, speckle bellies, or ducks, the better it's going to help you. And, that's more that you can utilize. That's more tools in the toolbox that you can have, with competition calling, there's a few different types. With geese, there's live goose, which is if a live goose were to walk on stage, that goose would win. You're trying to sound like a few different geese in the park or one goose in the park. You're trying to sound as realistic as possible. But then you've got your opens, which are, minute and a half. It's a routine that you follow, which has a lot of very unrealistic sounds. But that what you're going for is you're trying to show the maximum performance of the call and the maximum performance of the caller and their ability to control that call. And it's the same thing with duck calling. That if you look up competition duck calling on YouTube, you're going to find World Duck at Stuttgart. You're going to find the ringing hail notes, right? The beep, 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 right? But you're not going to use that hunting. But what they're doing is they're showing the maximum function of the call and the maximum function and control of the caller. Same thing with open goose calling. You have your hail notes and your comebacks and everything like that. You're trying to create that picture of geese far off in the distance. You're getting their attention. They're coming towards you. You're getting them closer. You're working them closer. You get more excited, and then you lose them. You convince them to come back. You get them working again. You get them lined up, and you finish them. You're trying to create that picture in there by following that routine, right? But you're not necessarily going to be doing a lot of the same realistic notes as you would out hunting. Jordan, you said, man, this is one of the best seasons I've ever had when it comes to goose hunting, man. And you've been doing clucks, moans, and everything like that, right?
Yep.
And that's there's a lot of guys that I'd love to hunt with, and I love hunting with. That's their vocabulary with geese, and that's great. They're killing them. But there's a lot of times where I've noticed that there's a few geese that they could have capitalized on if they had known like another note or maybe just a different gear when it came to their calling. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
It can help so much, but there's a huge difference there, Elliot, man. I'm glad you asked that because not enough guys really think or know about that. They kind of just see competition calling and they think like, oh, that's what they're doing out in the field too, and that's completely the opposite.
Awesome. Well, I can tell you guys that the one thing that I want to improve on the most, especially after this podcast, is the calling aspect of my goose hunting game. And again, I want to point you over to Kyle, his Instagram page, which is it just Kile Jones, or do you have underscores in there or anything like that?
Yeah, it's underscore Kile Jones.
Is that no space?
Yep, no space there. It's just underscore Kile and then Jones, super common last name Jones. And it's the tab is the Goose Talk tab. And it's just there for guys to use. And honestly, you guys do a really, really great job of offering, free advice and educational information for guys, for your everyday hunter. And in my opinion, we need more of that. And that's kind of why I set that up just on the Instagram there. So that way it's helpful to guys to come to out in the duck blind or out in the goose blind.